Today is Sunday. In the early morning, Lin Nui was pulled down from the bed by her roommate Chu Mai. "Hurry up, you said we're going to play with the animals, and if you're late, there will be a lot of people." Chu Mai's appearance is the lovely type of a young girl, and her temperament is also very lively. In college, Chu Mai and Lin Nui lived in the same dormitory. Chu Mai soon saw on the internet that the game of jumping animals seemed very fun. The price of playing was cheap. Each time it only cost 100 VND. With one ticket you can play all day at that place. Xiao Mei lived and died wanting to entice Lin Nui to accompany her. While walking and reviewing the joyful games of her childhood, Lin Yu really couldn't shake Xiao Mei, so she could only agree to go with her. In fact, Lin Yi planned to sleep for a day to be healthy. She was still dreaming, yawned lazily, got up and washed her face, put on a little makeup, put her long hair in a mess at the back of her head, because she had to play with the animal today, so she would wear a black shirt that was tight to her chest on the inside in combination with shorts, and it was okay to wear a loose t-shirt on the outside. Looking in the mirror, I only saw that inside there was a girl with a delicate white oval face, big eyes full of water. At first glance it was very calm and lovely, because her hair was naturally curly, so it created a pure look to reveal her lazy charming neck. The legs are both white and long and straight, so they are very attractive to the eye. The nipples stand erect and rise high and swing in front of the chest, making others unable to control themselves but want to play and caress them. Looking at her mesmerizing body in the mirror, Lin Nui licked her lips. She and her ex-boyfriend had broken up for more than half a month. It's only been a moment, but it's been so long. Moreover, last night she happened to have a spring dream all night. So right now she really wants a strong man who presses her under her body and aggressively wants her. She really hoped that when she walked out the door today, she could meet DM enlightenment, that someone would use her big meat cone to fill her hungry and uncomfortable small acupuncture point. It's just that these ideas are all hidden in her heart. On the outside, Lin Yu looked extremely pure and righteous. Even her best roommate, Xiao Mei, didn't know this lewd face of hers. "Lin Yu, are you done?" Xiao Mei in the living room urged. "Okay." Lin Yu looked at herself in the mirror for the last time, confirming that there was no problem with her makeup today, and then she came out of the bathroom. The two girls walked out the door, in a straight line to the happiest game in the world. When he went to the place to play with the animals, he only saw that the inside was crowded with people. Lin Yu looked around everywhere. In fact, they were all parents bringing their children, and the children in that place were dancing and playing and looking very happy. It seems that she herself must be disappointed and come home today. Lin Yu immediately lost interest. Looking at her roommate, her face was happy and excited, so she also pretended to be very interested and bought a ticket to the stadium with Chu Mai. Because this was her first time playing with the dance animal, she also felt very strange. The two girls stood left and right, dancing a little, jumping a little, and then dancing a little. The feeling of being shot up in the air in the blink of an eye made people can't help but happily relax a lot of emotions. The only thing that is not good is that the whole yard is only two 20-year-olds. The rest are parents with children, so at first glance, the two of them look a little strange. The square was very large. The two of them played for a moment, and saw that there was a very large adhesive in front of them. As long as they put on special clothes, they could immediately put themselves on the adhesive block. This looked very interesting. Especially on the top to the sticky plate, there is a child hanging on the top, which looks funny and cute. Lin Yu and Xiao Mei glanced at each other and decided that they had to play this. Arriving in front of the sticky board, Xiao Mei couldn't wait any longer. Quickly put on specialized clothes to play sticky board. Lin Nui helped Xiao Mei stick to the top. Lin Yu's physical strength was very weak, so she couldn't make Xiao Mei stick to a high place. After only trying 2 or 3 times, Lin Yu was so tired that he was breathless. "Hurry up and look over there." Xiao Mei seemed to have discovered something, and hurriedly told Lin Yu to look at the direction next to her. Lin Yu arbitrarily looked through the speaker and only saw that it was a young couple, about 26 to 27 years old. The wife at first glance looked very gentle and polite, and the husband, because she had her back to Lin Yu, she couldn't see his appearance clearly. But from his strong figure and long slender legs, it could also be known that his appearance was definitely inferior. The couple brought a lovely child. The husband picked up the child, stuck to the board. The child at first seemed scared, but when he was really hanging in the air, he was excited to dance with his legs and hands. The wife gently stared at her husband and child. The husband turned his back to Lin Yui, looked at the figure of his child, who was not afraid of the sky or the earth, and complimented, "My son is very good." The low man's voice was easy to hear, piercing through the noisy noise and clearly entering Lin Yui's ears. Lin Yu felt like an electric shock, and in her heart she was half numb. I didn't think that I could meet such a superb man in this place. Just looking at his figure and hearing his laughter, she had a kind of emotion in her heart that wanted to approach this person. If you can see this man's appearance, it's good. Perhaps it was the man who heard Lin Yui's heart, and at this moment, he turned his head. The man was very handsome, with a straight nose, bright eyebrows, and a deep gaze that could not see the bottom, and he looked mature but calm. I heard that men with big noses usually have a very strong sexual aspect. Lin Yu peeked at a glimpse of his groin and saw that his pants were puffy. It can be confirmed that the meat is very large. This man must be very beneficial when having sex? Thinking of this, Lin Yu's small acupuncture point immediately held his heart. It couldn't be wet, and the lust began to run rampant at will. She could feel that her underwear was all soaked. Her face became flushed, and it was difficult to hold back her legs, suppressing her inner lust that erupted for fear of being discovered by others. The man looked at Lin Yui's eyes and was a little stunned, then quickly turned around and put his hand on his wife's shoulder, watching her child play and smile happily. The man, who occasionally whispered intimately to his wife, seemed to show sincere affection. This is a talented couple, a young couple in love. They are so happy, Xiao Mei said admiringly. That's right. Lin Yu didn't pay attention to the answer. What is happiness like? She didn't ignore the man's eyes when she saw her just now, and it immediately lit up, just afraid that this man's actions would show that he was a good husband. It was really meaningful. Lin Yu suddenly broke the rules of waiting. It seems today is not a cup of work. It's just that the couple brought their children with them, and the three of them looked very harmonious and happy, because he has a beautiful and gentle wife and a lovely lively child. At first glance it looks like a man who loves his family very much. Could she really squeeze in between them? Lin Yu was a little hesitant. She glanced at the man again. The man held the child in his chest. The wife pulled his elbow, as if they were about to go to another game. From the beginning to the end, the man's eyes looked straight at him, not even glancing at Lin Yu to take one. Just like the moment when the two eyes met earlier, the glowing man's eyes were just her hallucination. Lin Yu couldn't help but feel disappointed. Or is it because she attaches too much importance to her own magic power? No, absolutely not a hallucination. There is no cat in this world that doesn't steal. It's only decided that there is a chance and whether you dare to do it or not. Meeting a man who made her have a lot of interest was not easy. She didn't believe that the other man was really as decent as he looked. Even if she didn't have a chance, she wanted to create a chance. When the man left, Lin Yu was distraught and playing with Xiao Mei while quietly watching where the other man was going. She noticed that the couple went to the sponge game. The baby was also out with another child, and the couple sat outside the chair taking care of each other. Lin Yu pretended not to notice and continued to play the sticky game. I'm so tired, let's find a place to rest. Xiao Mei had just been playing loudly for a long time, so she also felt a little tired. She opened her mouth and asked, "Let's go to the restroom?" This place is designed with a separate room for children to rest when they are too tired to play. Lin Yu refused. In the restroom there are all chairs, I want a place to lie down. After that, she seemed to arbitrarily point to one place. Otherwise, go there. It was also big enough for the two of us to lie down and play at the same time. Lin Yu's place is just a sponge game. It is a very large lake. The inside is filled with square sponges of 5 colors. If one person lies down, it will sink deep inside the soft sponge. Just looking at it makes people feel very comfortable. Get. Xiao Mei agreed. The two young girls went to the sponge lake. Lin Yu glanced at the man sitting by the lake with his wife. The wife was leisurely chatting with another mother. They seemed to get along very well. The man just lowered his head and looked at his mobile phone, occasionally raising his head to glance at his son playing in the lake. Lin Yu chose a very close distance to the man's son and jumped in. If so, as long as the man raised his head to look at his son, he would inevitably see her. Xiao Mei also jumped in. The two female comedians were lying in the soft sponge. It felt like wandering in the clouds. There was a kind of dreamy feeling of the world fairy tale. It's so comfortable. Her short hair fell loose. She let out a sigh of relief and closed her eyes. Lin Yu knelt with her hands behind her head. Her long slender legs slightly intersected. The stubborn white legs swayed arbitrarily but naturally. In the eyes of others, it would naturally become a beautiful landscape. Lin Yu felt that there were several men and staff around her who occasionally looked at her. It's just a pity that she wasn't interested in their attention. From beginning to end, she just wanted to seduce a man. The man was still playing mobile. Boring to death. The wife was still excited to gossip with the other woman. The topic of conversation was nothing but a few clothes and cosmetics and his cooking skills with miscellaneous things. He didn't feel interested at all. The son is playing in that place. If his wife is attracted to other things, then of course a husband like him must take good care of the child. He raised his head and turned his gaze towards the place where the child was playing. Originally, he glanced calmly at Will, but this time his gaze stopped. As a beautiful young girl with a real figure, her whole body reveals a youthful temperament and vitality, and she is arbitrary, unconsciously attracting the eyes of others. This girl he had met once. The man glanced at it for a moment, and then remained motionless and recovered his sight. Lin Yu saw that his gaze stopped on her body, carrying some evaluation and enjoyment, which made her very satisfied. What's so fun about a mobile phone? Playing it is not as good as playing her? Lin Yu silently hummed in her heart for a while. She must take off this man's mask and sleep with him. Imagining the scene where this handsome man would use his big black coarse meat to make her rub her breasts with force, aggressively poke her itchy acupuncture points, making the small acupuncture points full of semen. Just thinking of such a stimulating case, Lin Yu immediately felt a gurgling heat gushing out from the small acupuncture point as a tight underwear. No, if you keep imagining, you're just afraid that the lewd juice will penetrate your shorts and flow out. You need to act quickly. And at this moment, Mr. Tuan's husband was calm, of course. He didn't know how many meters away he and his wife had a young girl who was secretly missing the big meat cone under his groin, being seen by a man with big breasts. Lin Yu picked up a sponge square and enjoyed it, threw the sponge up, threw it down again, and then took a picture over and over again as if he didn't get tired. Perhaps this situation was too comfortable. Xiao Mei's right hand made a very small snoring sound, and she fell asleep. This was exactly what Lin Yu wanted. Her hand was slightly raised, and she didn't know if it was intentional or unintentional. In the hand of the cube, the sponge stopped on the left very close in front of the boy. Lin Yu curled his lips. "Kid, can you help Chi bring the sponge over to him?" she said softly in the direction of the boy. The boy was playing by himself, and he was relatively shy at first glance, and he didn't dare to come into contact with other children. About 4 years old, although his face is immature, he can also vaguely see the appearance of the brother he inherited from his father, so when he grows up, he will be very similar to his father, and he can fascinate many women. The child raised his small face and looked at the beautiful sister in front of him, and looked at the sponge square again, a little hesitant. Lin Yu smiled as much as before, and she even shook hands and stretched out her hand in front of the little boy, waiting. "Can't you help me?" Perhaps it was Lin Yu's goodwill that made the little boy recall just in case. The boy finally chose to grab the sponge with his small hand, and carefully handed it to Lin Yu. Lin Yu accepted, his beautiful eyes curved into the shape of a small new moon. "Thank you." "Nothing." The boy shyly lowered his head and played with his fingers. "Otherwise, let's play together?" Lin Yu tried to probe and said. The boy's eyes lit up, and he shrank slightly, shaking his head. Lin Yu smiled and threw the square sponge in his hand, and threw it directly into his chest. Lin Yu picked up a square sponge block and enjoyed it, threw the sponge up, threw it down, and took a picture of it. She kept repeating that movement as if playing tirelessly. Perhaps this place is too comfortable, so Xiao Mei lying on her right hand made a very small snoring sound, and her friend was asleep. This was exactly what Lin Yu wanted. Her hand was slightly raised, and I don't know if it was intentional or accidental, but the square sponge in her hand soared up and fell right to the left and very close to the boy. Lin Yu curled her lips. "Kid, can you bring that sponge over here to help me?" she said softly to the boy. The boy was playing alone. At first glance, I knew that the boy was relatively shy and did not dare to contact other children. The boy is about 4 to 5 years old, although his face is still immature. He can vaguely see the handsomeness he inherited from his father. Maybe when he grows up, he will be very similar to his father, and he can fall in love with a lot of girls. The little boy raised his little face and looked at the beautiful sister in front of him, and then at the square sponge. The boy was a little hesitant. Lin Yu still maintained the same gentle smile on his face. She even stretched out her hand in front of the boy and waited. "Can't you help me?" Perhaps it was Lin Yui's goodwill that made the boy withdraw his guard. And in the end, the boy chose to pick up the sponge with his small hands, and then carefully handed it to Lin Yu. Lin Yu accepted, her beautiful eyes curved into the shape of a small new moon. "Thank you." "Nothing." The boy shyly lowered his head and bit his finger. "If we can, let's play together?" Lin Yu tried to probe. The boy's eyes were bright, but he was a little coward and shook his head. Lin Yu smiled and threw the square sponge in his hand towards the boy. The sponge directly flew into the boy's chest. "Haha, it hit me." She smiled and told the boy to hurry up and throw it here. "I try throwing it to see if it can hit me?" After hearing that sentence, the boy seemed to be cheered. So he also let go of his timidity and threw the square sponge at Lin Yu. The first time there will be a second time. The two of them keep throwing back and forth and gradually getting used to it. The boy is no longer afraid of strangers. The two of them, one big and one small, have a lot of fun. The man sitting by the lake, from far away he could hear his son calling excitedly, so he was a little surprised. His son only shows a lively appearance to the family members, and when facing outsiders he is always silent no matter what others say. His children do not respond. Being able to play so happily without him and his wife is really rare. When he saw clearly who was playing with his son, he raised his eyebrows. "It's that girl." Only to see the girl who seemed to be saying something to his son, then immediately saw his child running over excitedly and admiring the small face, pleading, "Ba, I want to play with that beautiful sister." "Okay." The man touched his son's soft hair, and when he was halfway through it, he suddenly stopped. He stared at his son's back. His gaze became deep. The young girl walked towards him with white feet step by step, her breasts bulging, her big breasts swaying back and forth with her every step, just a little less, and then jumped out, and there was a small waist, each of which showed gravity. She walked in front of the man and the boy and stopped to face the man. She bowed her body slightly, revealing a beautiful smile on her face. "Your son is lovely. Can I borrow him for a while?" The man's vision suddenly stiffened. He was sitting when she bent over. From this angle of his, coincidentally, he could see the big breasts vibrating violently in the tight shirt of the other person. The white nipples in the middle was a deep groove that poked the infinite dreamer. It's just a pity that the nipples are covered by the corset, so he can only see a few light pink areolas, but it is even more tempting, or people want to tear the corset and look at it carefully. The man's eyes were a little regretful. You can think that if you hold such a beautiful pair of breasts in your hands, what kind of soulless enjoyment will there be? "What are you?" The girl spoke up again. The man moved his gaze upwards to face her beautiful face. Those big eyes looked innocent but pure at first glance, as if he hadn't noticed that he had been looked at in its entirety. "Didn't you really find out?" The man glanced at her deeply. He said calmly, "My son is a little naughty, so bother you to help take care of him." "Don't mind." Lin Yu smiled even sweeter. When she received the boy from the man's chest, she silently raised her breasts to his arms. Her breasts were born very large. This was what made Lin Yu the most proud. She didn't need to use a corset with a really thick sponge lining. Her breasts were really big. The fabric was a little thin, and the entire breast rubbed against his arm. The muscles in the arm are a little tense. He looked at Lin Yu. His eyes carried some parts of carefully looking and trying. "What cousin?" "Lin." Lin Yu smiled purely. "Miss Lin." The man knows how to listen to the address. "Wait a little longer. Maybe I have to go back to the company to handle the work. You and my son are bored of playing, so you can hand it over to my wife." Lin Yu was stunned, and when he saw the corner of the man's mouth smiling and pondering, he quickly understood his hidden meaning. "Rest assured." The man smiled slightly. He watched Lin Yu carry his son to the sliding ladder and slowly recover his sight. At this time, his wife was still staring at the mobile phone with the other woman and enthusiastically discussing the new costume design on the internet, so she didn't pay attention to what had just happened on her husband's side. Ba Lin Nui brought the boy to play on the slide. Xiaomei woke up, suddenly saw that next to Lin Nui there was another cute boy, so she was also excited to play with her. Tumai's temperament is lively and likes children, so she immediately played with the boy. Lin Nui used to play with boys, but now that Xiaomei was there, she could immediately turn her mind to pay attention to where the man was sitting. Only to see the man bow his head again, look at his mobile phone for a while, then stand up and say a few words to his wife and then left. Before leaving, the man did not forget to gently hug his beautiful wife. Lin Yu pouted. The wife looked at the shadow of her husband's back and left, then looked at the child who was playing with a smile and continued to chat with the other woman. Lin Nui was distraught to help Xiao Mei play with the boy for another 5 minutes and then said, "I have a stomachache, I need to go to the toilet urgently, you take care of this kid for me." Xiao Mei saw Lin Yu hugging her stomach with a painful appearance, so she hurriedly said, "You go quickly." Lin Yu quickly walked out of the sponge playing area. The first thing she did was to go to the big gate and look around for a while. Not seeing that familiar figure made her feel a little disappointed. Could it be that she misunderstood? She suddenly thought of another place. The public toilets in the amusement park are shared by men and women, and there are a series of hand-washing sinks outside. Lin Yu went inside, only to see a tall figure next to the sink leaning against the wall smoking. The man's elongated right thigh was slightly bent, seemingly lazy but arbitrary. A mist of smoke spilled out of his lips, covering his beautiful face, making him look cold and mysterious. Lin Yu's eyes lit up, and she didn't hesitate to pass by. At this time the toilet was empty because there were no other people, so it seemed to break the silence rule. Lin Nui's walking posture is very beautiful, as if she has practiced through the model's gait. At this time she deliberately shook her hips lightly, carrying a kind of unlikely demeanor. The man's expression smiled as if he wasn't smiling. He didn't feel surprised at all because of Lin Rui's appearance here, but on the contrary, he looked at the swaying Feng Zi girl in front of him with his eyes. Lin Yu walked in front of him and stopped. The distance between the two was really very close, so close that almost all Lin Yu was glued to him. The two could hear each other's breathing. The man who suddenly approached Lin Yu seemed really calm. He still leisurely spat out and swallowed the smoke. This is also a kind of tacit agreement. Lin Yu gently took a step closer. This time her whole body was really glued to him. His chest was really solid. The temperature of his muscles was transmitted through the slightly thin layer of his shirt, and the intense breath of hormones made Lin Yuan's mind squirm and lose its direction. Especially her big breasts are also to stay on his hard muscles. Despite the way she was corset, she could also feel her nipples erect and the desire to be cuddled by him. And her small acupuncture point was rushing out of lewd fluid. It's good. I really want this man to play with her lewd body. It seems that he is deliberate. His expression from the beginning until now is still like nothing to do. There is a beautiful person sitting in his lap but still not disturbed. Make me go. Lin Yu raised his eyes and pleaded with him. His eyes were a piece of demagoguery, and the magic almost flowed out of water. Miss Lin. The man laughed for a while and opened his mouth in a low voice. Are you sure? I want to. She answered surely. Be me, use your big meat cone to be aggressive as me. His right hand holding the cigarette stopped slightly. He carefully looked at the dignified-looking girl in front of him with deep eyes. Obviously, there was such a pure face, but the words were very lewd. And it really excites me. Damn. The man couldn't help but scold vulgar words. He threw the cigarette in his hand on the ground and then trampled aggressively with his foot. Immediately afterwards it was always like Lu Xiaohui. A man with a beauty sitting in his lap but still not disturbed, blinking and transforming into a wolf. His big hand gripped her chin tightly. His thin fierce lips covered her lips. Tossing and turning, biting and pulling. The tip of her tongue flexibly penetrated into her mouth cavity like a greedy hungry wolf that snatched away the innocent girl's beautiful saliva. The man's hands were not idle either. One arm tightly wrapped around her slender waist. Another placed in front of her chest and caressed. As if he felt that he was not addicted, he directly slipped his hand into her tight chest corset. The big hand didn't care at all to massage the big breasts. 2 streams of nipples were pinched into bizarre shapes. Corn. Lin Yu couldn't help but cry out. The tip of her tongue was touched by the tip of the man's tongue, and her breasts were also tightly held by his big hand. This kind of feeling was too comfortable to make her want to moan. But it's still not enough. She couldn't help but twist her buttocks and look at him with watery eyes. Xiao Xiao. The man smiled softly, his low tone breaking the tears. Patting Lin Yu's uneasy little buttocks, the man coaxed and said, Rest assured, I will immediately satisfy you. Finishing his words, the man's hand came over. He gently hugged Lin Nui and walked into the bathroom located at the end. The man put Lin Yu on the toilet seat and then turned around to lock the door. After doing everything, he was neither quick nor slow to take off the belt of his trousers. Waiting for him to pull down the zipper, he only saw his underwear surrounding a very long meat cone. Looking at the shape looks 10% positive. Lin Yu's lustful gaze made the man curl his lips. After that, he released the huge flesh cone from the layers of bondage, making the cone field reveal its true face. The flesh cone was both large and coarse, moreover it was very long, the body of the stick because it had been used by the master countless times, so it looked dark, and the huge glands was facing her uprightly, and the face was fierce. Dense black hair, 2 extraordinarily large sacs of semen stood out. It was also very full, and it contained a lot of semen that Lin Yu loved dearly. Oh my god, it's so delicious. Lin Yu's eyes widened. Like it? Lin Yu's expression won the man's heart. He asked in a low voice. Lin Yu nodded vigorously and did not hide it at all, but expressed his love for the big meat cone. I like it so much that I can't stand it. The man was really satisfied with Lin Yu's answer. He waved at her to tell her to come a little closer. Lin Yu followed the translation to the front a little, because the man was standing, so the big cone of meat poked it on her face, and the tip of her nose was surrounded by a hot breath. If you like it, you can get close to it so it can know. On the top of his head came the words that carried his seductive tone. Lin Yu was in close contact with the meat cone. It was identical to the shape in her imagination, even surpassing her expectations. It's blacker and bigger than a sausage stick in a supermarket. It was majestic, vibrating upright, and when you look at it, you can see that it is secreting mucus to the outside. It was unexpected that Mr. Tuan looked slender on the outside, but under his groin he hid such a large and harmful meat cone. And this big meat conch will be truly inserted into her hungry little acupuncture point in a moment. Lin Yu laughed and waited in his heart. She grabbed the body of the stick with her small hands, rubbed it up and down, and the flesh seemed to be even more uplifting and majestic, waiting to be censored. Lin Yu lowered his head. She looked at it intently, then opened her small mouth to suck on the big meat cone. The tip of her tongue gently licked a sip. It was good, there was no strange smell. His meat cone was really clean. The place where the edible liquid was leaked was not very good, but it was not to the point of disgusting her. Next, she sucked on her glands and began to lick and suck with her mouth, spit out and swallow. The tip of her flexible tongue occasionally glanced over her eyes, giving the man a shudder. Unfortunately, the small mouth opened with all its might, but it was still only able to swallow half of the large piece of meat. And the strong body of the stick and the 2 pockets at the bottom are still lonely and unloving as before. Lin Yu didn't let them continue to be lonely. She rubbed the body of the stick with one hand, and the other hand gently caressed the man's 2 bags of dark brown eggs. At the same time, the small mouth did not stop, but coordinated with the movements of the hand, the speed of both sucking and spraying. She carefully used her warm, wet mouth to surround his large cone of meat, and prevent the large cone from being bitten by her teeth. Her mouth was not bad. The man at this time squinted slightly, stroking her black hair a little with his bare hands, enjoying the pleasure of being served by the young woman. According to the posture, she and him kept in close and intimate contact. He also pulled off the mask of calmly loving his wife and being a good man in front of others. His expression became even more arbitrary. Because he was comfortable with his servants, he began to talk to her in his spare time. Such a proficient posture. Have you already licked through a lot of meat cones? 10 pieces. Lin Yu relied on her memories and counted, because the meat was stuffed in her mouth, so it took more than half a day for her to really try to answer all the words. It's indeed Xiao Taoism, the man exclaimed. For this number he did not feel unexpected. Say, when did you start dreaming of my meat cone? The man asked lightly. The moment they first met. Immediately. Under the man's pressure, Lin Yu blushed and spoke the truth. Ever since we met, have you dreamed? The man raised his eyebrows. He was living with his wife and children at that time, and there were many people around him, and this girl began to crave his big cock from that time. It was really Taoistic. The man recalled when he first met this girl, she was dressed hot, with long legs and big breasts. He only glanced at her and saw the seductive intention in her eyes. It was just because his wife was by his side and the place was really not suitable for field battles. so he could only pretend not to see it. Unexpectedly, this girl then took the initiative to approach him, seductive acts one after another. He soon quietly retracted into his eyes. He was not a prince himself. If this girl had aroused his lust, he wouldn't have refused. It's just that on the outside this girl looks only 20 years old. On the outside she pretends to be pure and pitiful, and on the inside she is extremely lewd, and she dares to seduce him and suck his meat in her mouth. Is this girl born lewd? But one thing, this lewd girl really excited him enough. The man looked at her with deep eyes. A little deeper. He pressed her head a little lower, making the flesh cone penetrate even deeper into her oral cavity. Lin Yu agreed to his wishes. Just spit out and swallow it for a moment, and she immediately felt tired in her mouth. Because she always opened her mouth wide to absorb the large amount of meat in and out, the transparent saliva flowed outwards, forming an elongated silver thread that drooped at the corner of her mouth. The large meat cone was also made pleasant by her saliva. It was wrapped in a layer of transparent liquid, which at first glance was very lewd. Lin Yu spat out a large piece of meat and gasped. Her cheeks were numb. She needed to rest. The man was refreshed, suddenly lost the warmth of the surrounding, so of course he felt dissatisfied. He deliberately poked. The big cock of meat immediately whipped on her cheeks. All the wet saliva on the body of the stick rubbed on her cheeks made her face sticky. Continue. The man's orders were honest and trustworthy. He conveniently thrust a large meat cone into her mouth. Don't you give me a little rest? Lin Yu glanced at him reproachfully. She had just been scorned by a man who scorned her with a large cone of meat in the face, causing her to tremble for a while, and the lewdness in her body spilled out again. But she couldn't hurry. Just serve this man well first, and then she would be refreshed to the heavens. Lin Yu supported the body of the stick. This time she no longer had the option to use her small mouth to swallow the big meat, but to use her soft lips to keep her on top large meat. The tip of his tongue moved little by little, licking the entire body of the stick as if he was eating an extremely delicious dish, refusing to let go of a single corner. At the sound of saliva wringing out a little, she licked a line to his pubic hair. Her entire head went under his groin. The thick black hair under the man's lower body glued to Lin Yu's face made her itchy and tickled. She could smell the breath with some apples, and on her face was intoxicated. This was the taste of a true man, belonging to the hormonal flavor of the male breed. Licking along the meat taper to the bottom, Lin Yu slightly opened her small mouth wide and took the other 2 egg bags because they were full of semen and were heavy. She tried to smell them. On the top of his head, the man couldn't help but take a breath, and his big hand stroked Lin Yu's hair with a little force. The 2 new bags of eggs that she had just held in her mouth licked and sucked, intensely and refreshingly gathered to make him happy to the core. He lowered his head and looked at the girl who was half kneeling. She licked his egg bag with an extremely submissive posture, and there was a kind of excitement in his heart. This kind of euphoric feeling is not only emanating from the body but also mentally. It was like this girl was his charisma. He could control this girl's every move at will, arbitrarily mess with her body and release the crazy lust deep inside. Lick it well. Wait a moment, I'll give you all the best, the man said in a low voice. After the girl under her body listened, the tip of her tongue immediately tried to lick it even harder, and her small hand did not forget to massage the big cone.